All right, so here we see Anthony Peratt and his work on plasma physics. Plasma, aka ionized gas, electrified air, electromagnetically excited gas. When it ionizes, it turns into plasma. That's what it's called, right? Lightning is plasma, neon is plasma. Those plasma balls you saw when you were a kid are plasma. When they follow magnetic fields, they take on certain shapes, right? And this is one of those shapes. You saw the squatting man with the hourglass figure in that last slide. This is called the God Self icon, or the Master of Beasts. And you can see here Bolivia, Egypt, North America, Sumer, Indonesia, Peru, Nigeria, Persia, India, Greece, all basically the same thing. A person holding like two lightning bolts or snakes, right? Is that meant to, sometimes it's animals, but is this meant to symbolize electricity or electromagnetism or something they saw? And, here's more of it, right? You even see the Anunnaki from Sumeria kind of taking on this shape of this squatter or this thing holding serpents or lightning or with wings, right? And you see more basic depictions of it, like at the bottom, the Celtic depiction of it, the Celtic depiction. But it's always a kind of a squatting figure holding two beasts or lightning bolts or vajras or snakes, serpents, right? And again, here's the Anunnaki, right? But it looks eerily similar to a biblically accurate angel, which is called a seraphim. Now, in ancient Hebrew, they didn't have vowels. So you look at SRP. What does that indicate? Serpent. But seraphim is also associated with fire. So it basically means a fiery serpent. So here we are back to fiery serpents, rainbow serpents, flying serpents, dragons, stuff like that. Oh, and what's this? The seven-headed serpent, right? You can see the one in Russia looks more like the squatterman, but as this plasma formation goes through different intensities and Z-pinches, and as it's confining to the magnetic field through different intensities, it can striate or branch out or do kind of different things sometimes. And the menorah and the seven-headed serpent represents one of these phases, the seven-headed phase. This is where the weapon of the gods comes from. The trident, the vajra, the pitchfork, the three-pronged weapon, right? As this plasma goes through different, as you can see there, like the Birkeland currents and the instability processes, different toroids form. It's always pretty symmetrical, but you can see here it takes on very familiar shapes, squatting men and, thunderbolt weapons of the gods. But one other thing that can happen is, as you can see on the bottom there, that's kind of the plasma column and the toroids and the way the magnetism branches out. And depending on how one wants to interpret it, you can see many things. So do you think this is the same thing as the thunderbird or the phoenix, right? Do you think that was a big noisy bird or a myth? Or do you think it could have been describing the same thing as the, fiery serpents, the rainbow serpents, the feathered serpents, right? This is an example of plasma, the northern lights, aurora borealis. This is plasma, and you can start to see how you can almost see wings, right? And if this happened on a cosmic scale where it was so unstable and so electromagnetically charged that it created streams of plasma or lightning. Lightning is just plasma, right? That came off of it like in really intense fashion and just started zapping stuff on the ground. You'd think it'd make an impression, and maybe they'd remember it through things like this, right? The blue star Kachina, a winged being, right? That signifies a cataclysm is on its way, right? It's part of the prophecy about the coming on of the fifth world for the Hopi, the Native Americans. And it's always some kind of, thing with feathers or some kind of a bird or a snake or a serpent or a combination of the two. And this is one of the reasons right here, right? At the top, you see a plasma shockwave, right? And below that, you can kind of see a petroglyph that looks a lot like one. And, like I was saying earlier, if you saw this in the sky, if you didn't know what it was, or even if you did, man, it would be so awe-inspiring and probably so destructive that you would immortalize it through iconography, through symbols, because maybe you didn't know what plasma was or how to communicate that to the next generation. Now here we see a comet, the Great Comet of 1744, that looks awfully suspicious to those, seven-headed serpents. So as these comets pass, which may cause this squatterman plasma apocalypse event, they ionize the gases in the sky or electrify the air. And per Anthony Peratt's work, that plasma develops in certain formations, in certain patterns, and a lot of it has to do with the magnetic field and plasma physics. Now here's the birth of Venus painting. Well, why is a planet, who's also a god, coming out of a shell? that looks just like the seven-headed serpent deal, right? This is just another take on it, another trope. And so the gods were planets. Venus is Lucifer. That's the Latin word for Venus, is Lucifer, light bringer. It's also Ishtar and a lot of other ones. And here we go, right? The seven-headed serpent, the shell, and now we find a form of Medusa, right? With the serpents coming out of her hair that, petrified things or turn things to stone. Well, if brick gets heated enough, like plasma heated, yeah, it can lose its color, swell up, kind of morph together, meld together, and brick buildings can turn to stone, So our mountains, or most mountains, melted buildings. Did Medusa? Here's another picture of Medusa with the snakes or the serpentine movement energy coming out of emanating from the central location, showing you that representing again plasma in the form of serpents or snakes or dragons, whether they be feathered or bearded or plumed or rainbow or whatever, right? It's always the same thing. It's always the same thing. And here we have, Medusa melting things to stone, turning things to stone, petrifying them. Kukulkan, right? Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl literally means feathered serpent, right? And so you have all these things from, whether it's from Mexico, from India, from China, all these variations and tropes on a feathered serpent or a flying rainbow dragon or whatever the case. But it's all talking about the same thing. It was a way to encode what they saw in the sky, which was ionized gas or electromagnetically charged air, right? Lightning, but super intense lightning, and lightning that followed magnetic fields. And the gases in our sky ionize at different colors. Oxygen and nitrogen are more blue. The helium and hydrogen at the top are more pink, right? And if they mix, you get purple. Some ionize as green. But if there's any doubt that these serpents represent electricity, may I submit to you on the top left some cave drawings from some natives, I believe in California. And for some reason, they got what looks like an electrical outlet there too, and they got a cross, which happens in the petroglyphs a lot. They saw it in the sky. Down the right, we have the Egypt scene where we've kind of got that snake representing electricity going to the light bulb. Is this a light bulb moment? It was for me when I saw that top left petroglyph. And again, more representations of these toroids and these snakes, this serpentine energy, and this person wielding that energy, this central figure, whether we're in, Crete or Utah or Italy, we see this same trope in petroglyphs or rock art, right? Or rock paintings, or even, morphing into religious iconography and looking more sophisticated later on. But this one I talked about earlier, this is in California. And I've kind of shown some of the images from the plasma experiments that they did with magnetic fields to show you that, yeah, this is what they saw. There's no questioning it, right? And below you'll also see the way that this plasma sheath, these plasmoids develop into like little snake things where they twist and turn and exact matches of petroglyphs on the rocks, right? And what's going on, like I said earlier, is this plasma it reacts to magnetic fields, right? And may even kind of create its own. Electricity and magnetism are really hard to separate, electromagnetism, right? It's kind of like one thing. And you can see here where it sort of kind of looks like a crab or a spider. Supposedly we have a bar magnet field on Earth, so that, our magnetic field plays into what shapes this stuff takes in the sky. So there's a spider, right? Well, we have grandmother spider in the Hopi, right, who wove her web of creation. But we also have this giant glyph in the Nazca Desert of a spider. There's all kinds of Nazca glyphs like this. They're called the Nazca lines. They're in South America near Peru, or in Peru maybe, but Nazca. And they're all representing what they saw in the sky. Why else would these people do this? And it just makes sense when you understand the magnetic field and how plasma reacts to them. Now, this is also a very similar image to that last one, right? This is the double squatterman. If you think of like cymatics or like music, how there are octaves, basically repeating patterns at different patterns of intensity, right? High, low. And the image can be doubled through certain frequencies or magnetism. But it's the same exact pattern you see on a turtle shell, right? Because sound can create patterns, right? It does create patterns. And this is more of that magnetic field that we have, right? Not that kind of, this is an image of the magnetic field, the side view of magnetic field compared to an owl's face. So, we live in an electromagnetic world. We are electromagnetic beings. The animals have fractal imprints of, electromagnetic patterns. And this is probably where like the golden ratio and phi and things like that come from, right? It's just things that are imprinted in the fabric of our very reality and nature. And, this looks like a stylized version of that magnetic field, right? So they had to see this in the sky, and just it blew their mind. So they started like scribbling on rocks because it was probably very, very destructive, very, very destructive as well. And to me, when I see this guy, I start thinking about how, they rub this stuff in our face to be a pop culture, right? So this is what I see. Pringles, right? It's even got the wavy lines and everything. And some of the Pringles, ads, they're winking. They just changed the logo to where the lines aren't there anymore. But, think about the rapture, right? Or Kronos eating his kids, but specifically the rapture, the Christian rapture. Once you pop, you can't stop. Is something going to get, sucked up? Like once you pop the top? How does the top get popped? I don't know. But if the genie gets out of the bottle, yeah, well, that's a good transition, right? I'm just showing you that in pop culture, they rub this stuff in our face. On the left, you see some petroglyphs that are depicting this plasma event and a little duck, right? But they took the duck and turned it into a lamp, and then the genie coming out of the lamp, right? Genie, Jinn is smokeless fire, right? What is plasma? Smokeless fire, unless it strikes something and catches it on fire. And this is maybe the culprit, Venus, aka Lucifer in Latin, in an alignment with Mars in front of it and Saturn behind it. And these planets were probably much closer at once, as depicted in ancient myths in Babylon and Aztec. They called Venus a smoking star. And this triple alignment, they would have called the alignment as a whole like Shamash or Utu or Ra, right? Or, you have, it's just everywhere in symbology, right? The different symbols or patterns that alignment caused at different times. Here we see the seven-headed serpent symbology, the seashell symbology. We see the asterisk, a star, a little star, asterisk, right? The cosmic wheel, the bull of heaven with the crescent under there. There's so much packed into this Melek Taus or Malek Taus symbol. And what is it? It's the peacock, right? It's the same thing. NBC, they throw this stuff in our face. It's the seven-headed serpent, right? The peacock, right? It's just the Hydra, right? There's a bunch of names for it, and depending on how it's depicted and what point in the formation it's seen at, it can be Leviathan, it can be Kali Ma, it can be Jesus, Odin on the tree, but you can see this stuff everywhere, not just in logos, right, where they throw it in our face in pop culture. But I was in, my home, not my hometown, but the town I currently reside in Tucson, Arizona. I was out, enjoying an event. I looked up, I saw this, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know what that is, right? That's that seven-headed serpent. That's that seashell. That's that Venus symbol. And, here you can just see different variations of that cosmic wheel, whether it had, 4 spokes or 8 spokes or 16 spokes, depending on when they saw it, right? What part of the alignment, formation, it probably varied over time as different things happened. Eventually, Venus or Lucifer fell or descended from that alignment, got too close to Earth and caused electromagnetic destruction. But anyway, here you see the whole alignment again in the pattern it created at times. This is called Shamash. This is what, somewhere over in Sumer or Iraq or Babylon, that Acadia, sometime that's what they're depicting here. And you can even see the guy's got a little thing that looks like Omega or an ohm or a magnetic device, right, to represent the electromagnetism maybe. And the crown, his crown is meant to symbolize the coronal discharge, coronal discharge. And yeah, so that's Shamash or Utu or Ra in the middle there. And in case you doubted me, right, all this ancient writing is very confused. If you look back to some of the Greek people who wrote about what the Sumerians were saying, they were calling Saturn the sun, but also Venus and Mars get mixed up with this whole thing, which is why I don't think it's as simple as Ninurta being Saturn or Shamash being Saturn. I think the whole alignment was Shamash, and it was made up of Saturn, Mercury, and Venus, right? And then Venus fell or descended. And a lot of this I did get from the Saturn myth by David Talbot. But I did a lot of work connecting different images and iconography to all this to make sense out of it. I actually found out about squatterman plasma apocalypse a long time ago but really just kind of discovered this whole Saturn myth that kind of explains the planets as the gods, and this alignment that explains so much iconography and so much about the planets being gods and Lucifer falling, Lucifer being Venus or Ishtar or Ashtar or Astaroth, all names with star in it, right? But that keyhole pattern, right? It's ubiquitous. We see it in the Ankh. We see it in these quote unquote tombs in Japan, right? This it almost looks like a UFO, right? Like beam me up, Scotty, right? It's a keyhole, right? Is it the key pattern to figuring out everything? I mean, it's kind of undeniable if you ask me. And you can see some petroglyphs coming up, not petroglyphs, but I guess geoglyphs, right? Boom, there. And I believe that's in Saudi Arabia, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I mean, what are the odds that, a bunch of people that don't know each other across space and across time are going to create all this iconography that lines up to be the same? And all of them said planets were gods and the gods were planets, right? And then, so Yahweh is just Jove, which is Jupiter in Rome, right? So imagine the Y as a J and the W as a V. Yahweh becomes Yahweh, Jove, depending on whether it's a J or a Y or a W or a V, Jove, Yahweh, Jehovah, it's the same thing, Yahweh, right? That's Jupiter. It's also called Zeus or Deus Pater or the Sky Father or the Godfather, right? That's Jupiter. And then this is one of the formations that happens. It's called a Birkeland current. And when this Birkeland current happens, the plasma filaments into exactly 56 dots, 56 points. Now, that top right petroglyph is a lightning brother in Australia. It has 56 points on the crown. The ones in the middle at the bottom are across the country from each other. One's in Arizona, but they line up exactly with 56 points. A lot of headdresses have 56 points. So does Stonehenge on the outer rim. And again, I doubt that was really SpaceX in the sky a couple months ago or whatever, because the ancients always documented what they saw in the sky when it freaked them out on rocks, and there are petroglyphs that match that exact image. Maybe Van Gogh tried to tell us too with Starry Night. They put this stuff in our face in pop culture. The ancients knew about it, blew their mind. They scribbled it on rocks. I'll leave you with this: Revelation 1:12. I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me, and when I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands, or 7 points of the menorah, 7 points of light. And among the lampstands, or points of light, was someone like a son of man. That's their way of saying, holy, I saw something that looked like a dude in the sky and it had 7 heads, right? So that's Revelation. That's the apocalypse. That's what's going down. That's what went down, and it will go down again. Hope you enjoy.